freshman quarterback Bryce Underwood opened up a ton of eyes across the nation with his supreme arm talent. But this challenge against Oklahoma is one that is very devastating potentially for most true freshmen. So, will it be devastating to Bryce Underwood? That's going to be the big question. For those of you new around here, my name is Colin Bashnigel, the host here at Bash's College Football Show, and you can find me over here on TikTok if you just look up Bash's CFB Show. Make sure you like the video if you like the video and subscribe for more content just like this. I did indeed rearrange these pennants, so all of these games are happening this week. I didn't order any new pennants this week, so Duke, Illinois, for example, isn't going to be up there. It is what it is. All right, going into this game, man, I am super excited to watch this game on Saturday night. The number 9 in my rankings, Michigan Wolverines, taking on number 14 in my rankings, the Oklahoma Sooners. This is going to be an interesting game, a very, very entertaining one to watch. Bryce Underwood, impressive in the opener against New Mexico. Just his arm talent, some of the throws he was able to make. Now, there were some concerns, of course, with the Michigan offense. A couple of things to talk about. First, the wide receivers need to step up. I still don't know who their wide receiver one is. Wasn't very impressed with them. I thought there were a couple of crucial points where Bryce Underwood threw the ball in the right spot and the receiver was either not in the right spot or got his hands on the ball and couldn't come down with the catch. These receivers need to step up in a big way. Now, the other thing that I noticed against New Mexico, which really anybody could notice this if you just look at a play-by-play chart, Michigan could not run the ball if you take away the 2 explosive runs against Justice Haynes now, or for Justice Haynes. Now, with that being said, you can't take those run plays away, but are they going to be able to create explosive plays against Oklahoma in the run game? And if not, can they establish a consistent run game unlike they could not do against New Mexico? On a consistent basis, don't be behind the sticks, be ahead of the chains, help out your freshman quarterback in that way. But the big X factor in this game is going to be Marlon Klein. Marlon Klein showed up in a big way towards the end of last year when Colson Loveland was out. And to start the season, he looked really good against New Mexico. And I think he's a little bit more versatile than Colson Loveland was, even if Colson Loveland was a much, much better route runner and receiver. This guy is definitely more of a complete tight end. He can really get his nose dirty in the run game, but he's also very solid with good hands receiving tight end. Again, not as good as Colson Loveland. I think the dynamic ability that Colson Loveland had at tight end was pretty rare. But with that being said, in the run game, he's going to have to be helpful. I think Marlon Klein is the big X factor for this offense, especially if that offensive line does struggle against this Oklahoma defense, who I'm really high on, by the way. I love this front 7. I think they have a ton of talent. Eli Bones, one of my favorite secondary players. This Oklahoma defense not only has talent, but they have the CEO to call all the plays over there. So, yeah, I think that this is going to be an insane challenge for Bryce Underwood. And, the other thing, too, we're going to dive into that matchup here in a second after we look at Oklahoma's new look offense. But what is Michigan's game plan going to be against Brent Venables? Now, when you look at the Oklahoma offense, the first thing that jumped out to me, they did not look good offensively against Illinois State. And, defensively, it's not like they looked bad. I'm not worried about their defense. I'm worried about their offense. Now, don't get me wrong. I really do think Oklahoma's offense will be improved from a year ago. It 100% will. And I also think they were holding some things back. They weren't super creative in the run game. I'm curious to see if Ben Arbuckle can expand on that. But the interesting thing is this. When you look at Ben Arbuckle and his background, it's reliant on quarterback play, throwing the ball around the yard. And yeah, they've been able to sprinkle in the run game, but that was not necessarily against SEC or Big Ten level lines of scrimmages, especially last year at Washington State. So the number one thing that really is going to set Ben Arbuckle as a play caller behind the eight ball is that offensive line really struggled against Illinois State to me. Because again, you got to factor in lesser opponent. And of course, I really think this Michigan front seven should have a field day on this offensive line. They seem to, at points in that game, live in the backfield and was in Jack Lane's face of New Mexico. So this O-line needs to play better. And in particular, they need to be better in the run game. Because Oklahoma could not get anything going in the run game. I believe in their three running backs they have. Jaden Knott has shown that he's a really good player. Javante Barnes is a really good running back, and we've seen flashes of that. And then Taylor Tatum was a really highly ranked recruit that I at least was very high on coming out of high school. So it ain't a running back problem. It could be one of two or both things. A scheme problem or an offensive line problem. I think both definitely have a factor into it. Now, the thing that could help out the run game for Oklahoma is Sean Mateer's dual threat ability. He's the type of guy, I believe he had 800 yards rushing last year. He's the type of guy, though, that, if nothing's going to open or if there's pressure in his face, good luck getting him down. I'm going to cite the Ohio State-Texas game because that was a big game last week. Because though Ohio State wasn't getting home against Arch Manning, one of the best things that he was able to do was keep plays alive. Albeit, I think this Michigan pass rush has a very good chance to be a lot more dynamic than the Ohio State pass rush, but the example is there. Pressure was in Arch Manning's face, only got sacked one time and was able to extend plays. And even though he wasn't accurate with the football when he was on the move, he still got the ball off. I have confidence that John Mateer, number one, has a dynamic ability to take off and make a play with his feet. And number two, he's going to be pretty accurate on the move. After all, that's what he was doing really well at Washington State. But we'll see what happens with this run game. I think these running backs need to have a pretty solid day. I think Taylor Tatum, Javante Barnes, Jaden Ott, which I'm still not really sure what's going on with him, but check back on that on game day. Those three running backs, they need to find a way, whether it's through the offensive line or through scheme or just power through those running backs. They're going to have to figure out how to be able to establish at least a little bit of a threat of the run game to open up the ability for John Mateer to air it out. But I think ultimately this game is going to be decided by Underwood versus Venables. That matchup right there, the true freshman quarterback against one of the best defensive play callers in the sport of college football. And you could say whatever you want to say about Brent Venables as a head coach. He has done this thing for years. But the one thing that was able to get him was tempo. Because what Venables is relying on is some late confusion, some curveballs at the last second, just a couple of seconds before the snap. That's what he does. The problem Michigan has is there's no real history of repping tempo with any of these players on the Michigan roster that have been there in the past under Sharon Moore or Jim Harbaugh. So that's where you look at the offseason hire of Chip Lindsey. Chip Lindsey is a guy who has ran tempo, who has sometimes with some of the defenses he had at North Carolina, needed to run tempo and needed to score as much as possible. Listen, he's, as a play caller, able to do it, but execution, it takes a lot of reps, it takes a lot of practice, and a lot of times when you throw tempo into the mix in more than a 2-minute drill with a team that's not used to it, it takes some time to adjust. So I really don't think that's something Michigan can do, which makes me believe that Bryce Underwood is going to make some freshman mistakes. He's got incredible arm talent. I'm not doubting that. I've seen a lot, let me rephrase. I've seen enough of Bryce Underwood to understand, all right, this kid's supremely talented. When he figures it out, he's going to be dangerous. In fact, I think he makes Michigan a lot more dangerous this year. But the problem is when you had Michigan last year not being able to throw the ball whatsoever, they just ran the ball into a brick wall and then they would punt. They wouldn't really turn over the ball. In fact, in the cases where they needed to throw the ball, that's when things spiraled out of control offensively. They didn't really throw the ball when they didn't need to. In fact, the only time they got more aggressive throwing the ball was maybe down in the red zone against a stout Ohio State defense, in which Ohio State was able to get a big pick last year. So, with all of the repetition that it takes to run tempo through a 60-minute game, I don't believe they can do that. Which means I think Sharon Moore is going to have some problems with Chip Lindsey or butt heads with Chip Lindsey here, trying to get back to old reliable running the ball. But you heard me talk about how high I am on this Oklahoma defense, and I think this front seven is really, really good. They're not going to be able to do that with success. And then at some point, Bryce Underwood's going to be asked to throw the ball in an obvious passing situation where they're not going to be going tempo. And that's where Venables is going to confuse him. I think 2 picks is really going to flip this game on its head. I think Michigan's defense keeps them alive in this game, though. I got Oklahoma winning this game 17-13. That is my final score prediction. Oklahoma wins 17-13, which means Michigan covers. I, of course, wouldn't touch that number. It's definitely very, very risky to even touch a game with that talented of a player as a true freshman at quarterback going up against Brent Venables, though. Because who knows? If there is a mistake in the secondary for Oklahoma, I believe that Bryce Underwood could exploit that. But the problem is I don't count on there being a mistake for Oklahoma, a huge coverage bust or anything like that. I don't think Michigan is going to have the make up to, against a great defense like this, be able to hit X plays. And I'm sorry, but Michigan was very reliant on that last week. So, final score 17-13. The Oklahoma Sooners take it at home. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Make sure you guys subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you guys in the next video.